We're moving on to the next part of God's great story in the Bible being the greatest book of all time. Um, the words of it are alive, and it's a lamp unto our feet, a light unto our path. And we're taking the Storybook Bible from a kid's Bible and bringing out the very simple explanation of each part of the Bible and using the heroes of our faith as a place to stop and dig deeper than what the heroic story typically of the people in the Bible that we all look up to and revere, rightfully so. We've learned so much from these people. But again, I just want to give you the synopsis, and the reason for this series is to take this each part of the story and dig deep into the story to see what God was doing in this overall story using this particular passage or particular group of people in each passage, and it was moving the story along until one day when God would redeem us all with Jesus dying on the cross and raising from the dead. But there's so many backstories if you were looking at it like a story or a movie, or any other book that you might read. You would look at the backstory, and a lot of times in movies they'll do that. You'll have sometimes movies that have the hero and what they become and what they do, and then they might put another movie out that's kind of like the prequel or the backstory to really get in depth what was going on to make the character the way they end up and why we love them or hate them, whatever kind of character they're talking about in the stories. And so that's what we've done the last few weeks. And we're at the point now where we get to a very pivotal part of this story. Obviously, the whole Bible is pivotal. From beginning to end, it's pivotal. But when we talk about the promise that God made, if we back up a little bit and go back to where we've been, with God being frustrated with what mankind had become, and the flood wipes it out and starts over with a remnant with Noah. And then eventually Abraham comes onto the scene, and God makes this promise with Abraham, this covenant with Abraham. And then you go on in time, and then you keep hearing this saying, this uh, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. You hear that over and over again, that this covenant that God made with these people, that someday he would bring their descendants would, first of all, become so numerous that you could hardly count them. It would be out of control, an explosion of the population of God's people, starting with Abraham. And then it would eventually grow on until Jacob and Isaac. I mean Isaac, and then Jacob, and then Jacob's one of his sons with Joseph. And talked about last week how Jacob was a very questionable character person, but God used him anyways. And then through Joseph ending up in Egypt, God's people end up in Egypt because of that. And so that's where we're at, and we're going to pick up there now. With it's from Exodus 1, and the name in this story Bible, it says the story of Moses, a baby in a basket. But interestingly, the way it starts, it picks up where we have been with Jacob. And so I'll just start reading, and then we'll eventually go to the adult story Bible and dig a little bit deeper in the story. But here's how it starts today. It says Jacob's family lived in Egypt for about 400 years after he died. His family kept growing and growing. Moms, dads, babies, big kids, grandmas and grandpas, aunts, uncles, cousins. Even though they all lived in Egypt, they called themselves Israelites. Remember Jacob's new name, Israel. They were God's people. Egypt had a new king, a mean king. He hated the Israelites and made them his slaves. He planned to kill all their baby boys so Jacob's family would get smaller instead of bigger. To protect her new baby boy, one mother made a basket that would float. She hid him in the basket in the reeds along the banks of the Nile River. The baby's sister watched to see what would happen. The king's daughter was on the river bank that day and saw him floating in his basket. "How sweet are you," the princess cooed. She felt sorry for the baby and she adopted him. She named him Moses, which means I lifted him out of the water. I'm going to go on a little bit. This skips along to Moses and the burning bush. So let's just keep going here. Even though Moses grew up in the palace of the king of Egypt, he knew he was an Israelite. One day he killed an Egyptian who was hurting a fellow Israelite. That made the king mad. Moses was afraid and ran away. God knew how badly the king treated the slaves. He didn't like it one bit, and he was ready to do something about it. While Moses tended some sheep out of the desert, he saw a bush on fire, but the bush didn't burn up. Moses went closer to see. "Moses, Moses," God called from the bush. Moses could not believe God was speaking to him. "Take off your sandals, Moses, for you are standing on holy ground. It is I, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I know that the king treats my people badly. Tell them that I will save them. Tell them I sent you. Then go to the king and say, 'Let my people go.'" God was sending him back to Egypt. Didn't God know that Moses had run away? Didn't God know that he was scared? God knew all these things, but he had big plans for Moses. So Moses obeyed God. He and his brother Aaron went to see the king. So that was a very cool synopsis of the story. And so most of you know the story that he went to Pharaoh and asked for to let God's people go, and he resisted, and there was this big fight, and then all these plagues happened that eventually got to where he would let them go, and then he chased behind them after he let them go, and that's the story of them parting the Red Sea so they could walk through on dry ground. And then when they came through, Pharaoh charged in after him with all of his army, and then the water fell back on top of them and drowned them. And God did this great, glorious thing to deliver God's people. And this is the part that gets it's always hard for me to really study this part of the story, because maybe it's because I identify with it the most, of God being faithful and then us being hard-headed and not really listening to what he says or being content with what he provides. All those kind of things are in this story while they're in the wilderness. And so I'm going to pick up one more part in the story Bible, and then I'm going to shift, and then we're going to go deep into what we're talking about today. And this is, it says, the story of Moses, a golden calf. When Moses was gone for so long on the mountain with God, the Israelites stopped trusting God. They said to Aaron, "We need a God who can lead us." So Aaron told them to take off their gold jewelry. He melted the gold and molded it into the shape of a calf. The people bowed to the calf. They bowed to the golden calf and brought it gifts. They danced around and worshiped it. God was really mad when he saw his people worshiping a statue. He sent Moses back down the mountain. "What have you done?" Moses cried out to Aaron. Trust only God." Moses asked God to forgive the people. Though God punished them, he never stopped loving them. He told them to keep walking toward his promised land. So now we're going to pick up in the actual Bible. We're going to be in the NIV. And what's interesting is this part where I'm going to start reading this. We end up again with God being so frustrated that he wants to, not destroy by water again. He said he wouldn't do that, and wasn't necessarily talking about the whole world this time, but he definitely was so angry he wanted to start over again, wipe them all out, and start over again um, with Moses. And so we'll see what happens here. But now we're going to be in Numbers 13. And I just wanted to pick up right here at 13 because I thought it was interesting because it ties in what we've been talking about with this last generation of the story with Jacob and his kids. And so it says, the Lord said to Moses, send some men to explore the land of Canaan, which I am giving to the Israelites. From each ancestral tribe, send one of its leaders. So at the Lord's command, Moses sent them out from the desert of Paran. All of them were leaders of the Israelites. These are their names. And you might recognize them: from the tribe of Reuben, from the tribe of Simeon, from the tribe of Judah, from the tribe of Issachar, from the tribe of Ephraim, from the tribe of Benjamin, from the tribe of Zebulun, from the tribe of Manasseh, from the tribe of Dan, from the tribe of Asher, from the tribe of Naphtali, from the tribe of Gad. And so it says the people's names, and they're the sons of these different people, but these are the tribes. And these are the tribes of Jacob's sons that were named. And that's who these tribes are: the 12 spies that were sent to explore the land that God promised. Moses sent them, the spies, in to see if they could take it and what it was about, and to bring back some evidence of what it was. And there's from these 12 tribes, and Caleb and Joshua are from the tribes, the lineage of Jacob. And so what I'm trying to say is, like, this story is so connected. And here we are finally at the place where God would actually do what he's promised all of these hundreds of years before, and deliver them into this land that he prepared for them, a land of milk and honey. And here we are, the 12 sons of Jacob are the tribes of Israel, and a descendant of each one of them is who went into and spied the land and came back with a report. And most of you know the story. 10 of them came back in fear, saying, we can't do this. We can't take this land. There's giants there. We can't do it. But 2 of them said, let's do it. Caleb and Joshua said, we can do it. Let's go at once to do it. And this is the part where it's sad that God got so frustrated with them. And so let me pick up here, and where God has basically had enough. The Lord said to Moses, how long will these people treat me with contempt? How long will they refuse to believe in me, in spite of all the signs I have performed among them? I will strike them down with a plague and destroy them, but I will make you into a nation greater and stronger than they. Moses said to the Lord, then the Egyptians will hear about it. By your power you brought these people up from among them, and they will tell the inhabitants of this land about it. They have already heard that you, Lord, are with these people, and that you, Lord, have been seen face to face, that your cloud stays over them, and that you go before them in a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. If you put all these people to death, leaving none alive, the nations who have heard this report about you will say, the Lord was not able to bring these people into the land he promised them on oath, so he slaughtered them in the wilderness. And so this is where God says, okay, I won't kill them, but nobody 20 or older is going into this land. That was the concession, that he wouldn't wipe them out. But because of their disobedience, they wouldn't go into the land. Only the two spies, Joshua and Caleb, that believed that it was possible, and the kids that were 20 and under, and those that would be born in the rest of the 38 years that they would wander in the wilderness before the older generation all died off, um, they would go into the land. And so that's the part it's always very difficult for me to study, because it rings true that how faithful has God been even to us, and we doubt, we resist, we take for granted the things that he's done. And so that's where this part of the story is. And the thing to look at behind the surface of this story is, yes, God is dealing with Moses, and he's dealing with these children of Israel, these people. But beyond that, it's God trying to do what he's been promising all along. And so that's where that's where it connects. That's the story unfolding here. Underneath this, God was trying to not just take these people that were tormented by the Egyptians into this promised land. It's beyond that. He's trying to take these people that he promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob into this land. After all of these years, he's finally right here, ready to take them in, and they refuse. So that's maybe some of the reason for the frustration and the anger, that you mean after all of this, I'm finally right here getting ready to do what I promised. All these people died in faith, hoping for this day, and here we are, and you're right here. You've witnessed all of these miracles, and you won't go? What do you mean you won't go? Okay, that's it. You're not going to go. Now you're all going to die in the wilderness, and so that's the part of where the story is, the story underneath the story of these people. That's what God was doing. He's meeting the needs of these people, but also meeting the promise made to these people long before. So that's where we're at. So now, how do we extract from this and bring it to today? How do we make a action out of this? And so one of the things that I wanted to do is to it's kind of skipping ahead a little bit, but I wanted to read this part of the story of Elijah, and I think that it ties into kind of at least what I'm taking away from this. And so this part it's in 1 Kings 19, and I'm reading in the NIV, and I'm going to start at 11. The Lord said, "Go out and stand on the mountain in the presence of the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by." Then a great and powerful wind tore the mountains apart and shattered the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind, there was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake came a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire came a gentle whisper. When Elijah heard it, he pulled his cloak over his face and went out and stood at the mouth of the cave. Then a voice said to him, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" Then he replied, "I have been very zealous for the Lord God Almighty. The Israelites have rejected your covenant, torn down your altars, and put your prophets to death with the sword. I'm the only one left, and now they are trying to kill me too." Then the Lord said to him, "Go back to the way you came and go to the desert of Damascus. When you get there, anoint Hazael king over Aram." And then the story goes on. But I took this from, I'm preparing a message um, for the next time I'm preaching at Clayton Community Church about, it's a leadership series we're doing, and influence, not necessarily leaders. Not everybody thinks they're a leader, but everyone has influence. So we're going to do several weeks talking about influence. And when I share, I'm going to be talking about leadership, and I'm calling it the power of the mundane. And what I mean by that is, like, we get so worked up about, or we pursue these big moments with God, these big mountaintop experiences, these big parting of the Red Sea experiences. We crave that, and we almost use the quest for these big moments with God, these big fire and ice and this thunderous, the big things of God. We live for that. But the power is in the mundane, the everyday. And as a leader, and I'll be talking to our congregation about leaders and their influence. And as a leader, we have to not be driven by these big moments of when we have a full house on Easter and Christmas Eve and all of these different things where we get the feels of, wow, we got a packed room and we're really doing good. And the power is in the mundane, every day, doing what God said, carrying out his will. And it's not flashy, it's just being faithful. It's just hearing his voice in a whisper. And that's what I took out of this. And I brought this into this message because I believe it ties in. I mean, go with me. I believe it ties in. It said, like in this situation um, with Elijah, that God said, "I'm getting ready to pass you by." But God wasn't in these big things. He was in a whisper. He was in a still small voice. That's where he was. That's where you listen for God. That's where you look for him. He's told us where he wasn't, but he said where he is. He's in the quiet. He's in the faithful. He's in the doing the right thing when nobody sees it. Nobody's there to notice it. Nobody's there to pat you on the back and say, "Keep going. You're doing such a good job." That's where God is, in the faithful. And that's where the children of Israel failed. They did okay when he was parting the Red Sea. They did okay when he was providing manna, and I mean, barely. They complained even about those things. But God did some of the biggest miracles ever. Like, we look back into the Bible, and these are the heroes of our faith because God did these amazing things that only God can do. And they saw and experienced these things, but that wasn't enough. They were not faithful in the everyday, just do what God said, go where He told you to go, have a good attitude, be faithful, do the best you can with what you have today. They failed that part of it, and they wandered off and started worshiping other gods, and God had to send Moses back down the mountains because they were making golden calves, and even his brother was leading them astray. And that's where one of the ways where they miss it, and I believe that's one of the ways that we can extract from this and pull it into today and how we live today. We can't live for the fire and the ice and the big explosive examples of God's power, the room full of people that are clapping and and worshiping with us and listening to our sermons. And we feel so good in those big moments. And the power is in the everyday. The power is in the mundane, just showing up. Again, that's what I'll be talking about with to leaders and influence people that have influence, and everybody has influence. Just being faithful, showing up, doing your job, being consistent, being faithful, being dependable. That's not really fun, but that's where most of the journey is. Most of the journey is in doing those great things. Me and my wife had a really awesome experience this past week with our kids on stage singing. Kingston was leading, and Violet was singing harmonies with them. And it was an amazing high, amazing time of, wow, we must be doing something right. I mean, look at them go. Look what they're able to do at such a young age. This is amazing. God, you are so faithful that the next generation, it's already not even waiting until they become adults to start showing what's possible with a family that serves you. Wow, God, this is great. And then we got a bunch of people patting us on the back, and you must be such good parents. You must be, oh my gosh, you're such good examples. Like, it was great. I'm not going to lie. It was awesome. It was a highlight. But the power is in the mundane. The power is not last Sunday with, I mean, it all came together for great. I get chills even thinking about it. It was awesome. But I can't live for only those moments. They're nice when they come, but you know what is that what means more even to my kids is the next day when we were tired and drove over to my in-laws house to swim, to hang out with them, to throw a football in the pool, to eat dinner out on the deck, to eat chocolate chip cookies, the mundane. And then the next day showing up to do homeschool, figuring out the new curriculum and figuring out trying to relearn divisibility, division for Kingston's math. Like, I can't even say the right words together to describe what we're having to do to help him with math. Like, that's where life is. That's where the faithful test the everyday, get up, get them through school, get them fed, try to create some memories with them of fun in the midst of just the everyday life. That's where the power is, in the mundane, in the everyday. Like, we shouldn't have to need the Red Sea coming up on its sides for us to rock. I mean, those are great. Those are great moments when God shows this awesome, miraculous thing, and we're like, wow, God must be with us. Look what just happened. That's great. But what about Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then especially during school, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Okay, we get a break on Saturday and Sunday. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Okay, we get a fall break. So we get 5-day break. All right, we can just kind of hang out and relax. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, the mundane. But that's where the power is. That's where the development is. That's where the deepening relationships are. Me and my wife's kids will remember more of the Monday through Friday than the Sunday. As much as we love Sunday at our house, we love Sunday. My kids love church. They pop up on Sunday mornings without anybody having to say anything. They're up and they're dressed and they've got their Bibles and they're ready to go. And they want to go with me early because I stop and get donuts for the church as we go. And they get to pick the donuts and they get to pick the cookies and they get to help set up and they get to be there the whole time and run around with their friends. We love Sundays at our church, but the power is in the mundane, Monday through Friday, where we have to convince them that what they're doing with these several hours every day matters in the grand scheme of their life. That's where these children of Israel missed it. The everyday, being faithful every day, doing what God said every day without these big mountaintop experiences or thunderous applause. Can we be faithful? That's what I believe we're supposed to take from this passage and this part of the story of the children of Israel, of Moses and his time trying to lead them to this promised land. And even he didn't get to go in. Next week, we'll pick up with the generation that actually did go in, with Joshua um, and Rahab, and that whole story of us actually, the promise being fulfilled in this generation of people. We'll pick up there next week. But what can we learn from the people that didn't make it? What can we learn from the people that had some of the most notable miracles ever, but didn't get to where God was trying to take them? What can we learn from them? That's what I believe we can learn, that we have to be faithful in between. In between the miracles, we have to be faithful. They needed to be faithful back then, and we need to be faithful today because God is still moving this story along. It's just our time in the history of this story until Jesus comes back and we all get to go to heaven. We're still in this story. We're still living it. So which part are we playing in the story today? Lord willing, Jesus tarry, as older people in my church used to say. If the Lord willing, if Jesus tarries, it means if Jesus doesn't come back tomorrow or soon or even in my lifetime, what will people say about our part of this story? When our grandkids are looking back on our lives, what part will we have in this story? Will it be a part of people that were faithful and saw God do awesome things sometimes, but otherwise they would just put their heads down and do what God told them to do, be faithful to bloom where they're planted, to do the best they can with where they're at and what God has given them every day, the mundane, everyday, not exciting. What did they do with that? I believe that's the lesson for today. Let me pray for us. Lord, help us to do the mundane. Help us to just follow you. Lord, those people all those years ago, it was an 11-day journey. It's unbelievable to believe that that journey from Egypt to the promised land should have taken them 11 days. But it was 40 years in the wilderness, going around in circles because of disobedience, because of not being content with what you were doing in the moment, not doing okay with the mundane. Lord, help us to do better. Help us to learn from their mistakes. Help us to learn from our own mistakes at other times in our own lives. Help us to be faithful in the everyday, the mundane. Help us to understand the power in the mundane, the power of the knowledge you learn doing the mundane and doing it well. And you accumulate so many days and weeks and years doing the everyday well that you are ready for the next thing God has for you. But not until you're faithful with what he's given you in that season, in this season, Lord. Help us to do what you want us to do with what we have today. We love you, Lord. Amen.